but I'm going to ask you to help me shorten the paper in just a few minutes by I'm going to ask you which of the three rubrics, two of which I'd like for you to help me decide which one not to use. I'm going to be talking about who or what is the individual with regard to Schleiermacher and Fosdick, which I'm going to do. But you're going to have to choose between which is you'd be more ready to hear. What is religion or religious faith to these two thinkers? Or who is Jesus Christ for our time? So I'm going to ask for your vote in just a few minutes. First of all, I have to exorcise a few demons because I grew up in this church in my high school years, and I spent one of the most miserable nights of my life in this very room. It was my first and last lock-in, right over there. So help me redeem this space, please. It's a great time to be alive, said Harry Emerson Fosdick. The world is breaking up. In all of our social relationships and institutions, winter is past. Spring has come, the fall is on. We're going out on a new generation. Plastic, pliable, fluid. What takes possession of it, what directs its course, what spirit informs it, will determine human destiny for generations. It is no time to waste. Fosdick's words could have been written in the intellectual pivotal eras of Schleiermacher's 1790s and his own 1920s. As then, so now, because they resonate for us today in the 21st century, because we can hear deep and rhyming echoes with these two crucial and paradigm-shifting times in which they lived. When Schleiermacher published in 1799 for the salons of Berlin On Religion, speeches to its cultured despisers, he began a lifelong effort to bridge two hostile to religion realms of late Enlightenment rationalism and emerging German Romanticism. 120 years later in New York City, when Fosdick spoke at a time of scientific and modern rationalism, and that is surging fundamentalism portrayed as its mortal enemy, he produced decisive sermons, which you all know, Shall the Fundamentalist Win? And in his aptly spoken books, the meaning of prayer, the meaning of service, the meaning of faith. Fosdick recast that structural bridge work in Life of Schleiermacher for his own day, offering thinking Protestant Christians kind of get a witness, and a real choice on how to believe, trust, and exercise faith in a fast-paced modern environment. I'm here to say that we could do well by following both these models in our century, because, as you know, theology does matter. In crucial times like ours, whether we do it well or not, consequences will happen. So, like I said before, I'm engaging in autobiography. I spent some of my wonder years in this church. My parents, my father is still here. I guess I'm a theologian because of you. Second, I was ordained as an American Baptist minister in the church that Rockefeller built for Fosdick, the Riverside Church up in New York. And third, and the key reason I'm here today is because of a Schleiermacher seminar taught by Christopher Morse at Union Seminary across the street from Riverside that led to a friendship with Terry Tice. And the effort, the work I'm doing this morning with you is part of a chapter that's coming out next year from Withen Stock on Schleiermacher's influence on American thought and religious life. There's 27 chapters, mine will be one, but it's going to be hopefully a good read. Both Schleiermacher and Fosdick held jobs in the academy during the week and then held forth in an urban pulpit on Sunday mornings. That back and forth across the faith academic bridge each week has also been a critical part of my life. Additionally, both theologians were people of faith who staked their faith lives on the idea that beyond the tightly scripted words of dogma or creed, there is a God that is in relationship with us. And that is very Baptist, by the way. Both scholars would love to be around for today's theological issues. First, each dealt with Christianity's skeptics for his day, much like we deal, sigh, with our populist new atheists. For Schleiermacher, it was the culture despisers. For Fosdick, it was the Darwin and scientism crowd. Second, Schleiermacher had to deal with a kind of proto-fundamentalism of his day. And Fosdick became famous for his own fights with the capital F fundamentalists of his day. Then both men were wise guides for the ways that two different human needs make themselves known in spiritual life. There's the lure of universality, like deism, natural religion, and growth of the sciences that have supplemented religious knowledge. and for many become a substitute. Second, there's the call of the particularity of positive beliefs, positivist dogmatics, which translates into assurance for some and certainty for others, because some people need to know their security. These two guys felt themselves guides between the Scylla of universalism or the so-whatism of whatever form, and the Charybdis of fundamentalism and dogmatism. Separated by a century by the Atlantic Ocean, Schleiermacher and Fosdick shared close correspondence of concerns and shared intimate theological awareness. They agreed on the value of religion in general that needed to be cultivated deeply, in Christianity in particular, if one is to do theology faithfully. Each harbored holy doubts about a secular-only sense of truth. Both had vocal critics. Each preached every Sunday of his adult life, finding his speaking life to be as comfortable a stance for public intellectual activity as the written page, of which each produced many. Now, 3 rubrics. You get to vote on one of them. I'm going to do one on who or what is individual, then I'd like you to help me, like right now. What is religion or religious faith? Or who is Jesus Christ for our times? Which would you rather hear? Who is Jesus Christ for our times, or what is religion or religious faith? Anybody got it?
Jesus for our time.
I have a vote for Jesus. Jesus? Okay. All right. That'll help me shorten things up. As Craig was saying, the role of the individual is extremely important for us Baptists. In Schleiermacher's day, the Enlightenment was still a resounding declaration of independence for the individual from heteronymous authorities. That sense of self, first understood as male and property owning, was slowly disentangling itself from institutions that formed and then fed upon the group, whether it's religious, political, or economic. The resulting seismic shifts in thought transferred creator rights from God and then the group. They transfer them then to the individual. One's own experience provided enough of a foundation for formulating one's own unique recipe of meaning and custom-made truth. Politically, economically, religiously, this declaration of independence set the individual free from the Kool-Aid of traditional power handlers, which the Enlightenment portrayed as Wizard of Oz-like manipulators behind thrones and scepters and crowns and mitres. Just by being born a human being, the individual held inborn, not given rights, requiring no divinity as their source or generator. A strong Enlightenment understanding placed a pedestal under the individual's immediate self-consciousness. Schleiermacher and then Fosdick later made that pedestal the only point where God's transformative grace could be registered in a person's life. At this point of individuality, the individual was an agent of his or her own deepening incomparability, called to be a certain kind of person in nature and in achievement. Schleiermacher could then say to his culture despisers that they were not so far from religion as they might have thought. Religion is nothing until it's personal, until it's individually appropriated and integrated. There is no viable knowledge about the universe until it's personally appropriated. Take that, scientist. Only then you can see yourself existing in relation. And that is the highest formula for religion, is how you understand God. You will know, he said, that imagination is the highest and most original activity in man, and that all besides it is only reflection upon it. Your imagination creates the world, and you cannot have God without it. The individual for Schleiermacher was not merely focal, but a kind of whole within the whole. Individuals for so long regarded as a part of the universe were no less wholes unto themselves, W.H. Holes, conscious exhibitors of the universe, synecdochal manifestations of God's full wholeness. Fosdick, his own thematic focus on the individual, extends these Schleiermachian themes. He built his reputation as the consummate preacher through exploring how the riches of the Christian tradition and the Enlightenment liberal movement rested upon the normal experience of an individual. Fosdick's theme of the individual emerged in the following dimensions. First, as Schleiermacher had said, Christian faith is only real when it's individual, individually chosen. At any other level than the individual, it's inauthentic, even dangerous. He petitioned in one sermon, "O Son of Man, what could be done on earth with a few people for whom the divine is real?" Second-hand Christianity is necessary as a heritage, as a public inheritance, he called it. But it does one no good if Christianity is not individually experienced. This led him to be intrigued by the individuality and personality of Jesus. As for Schleiermacher, he bypassed substitutionary atonement theory. Sorry if anybody's like that. It was only Jesus' winsome force that could ignite and forge and bring out the potential of a human. The force of Jesus' attractive personality enables and brings to his highest fulfillment for the individual. You are divine, he preached. Live up to it. Fosdick then made his distinctive theological leap. He linked this inner life that makes us uniquely who we are into an argument for the existence of God. I call it the personality argument for the existence of God. In his sermon, The Inner Road to God, individuality is our noblest fact. I quote, "I have not deliberately tried to make the description of the inner road an argument for the reality of God's existence," he preached, "but I think it's that. You here this morning, tempted to disbelieve in God, there's one thing you cannot deny. The inner road is real. Love of beauty, love of people, love of our children and their children, and the kind of world they will have to live in. That road is real. It stretches out from every heart, traveled too seldom, cluttered too often, but real. It's the noblest thing in human life. Do you really think that it has no destination? Could that road be really a blind alley? Strange that so lovely a road in human life should come by chance and prove only to be a cul-de-sac. No, my friends, the universe cannot be so irrational. The inner road leads straight to God. So the purpose of religion for both is to enhance individuals' authorship of their own faith. And now we turn to what? Jesus? Okay, thank you. We can find Jesus here. Don't tell me anybody's looking for Jesus. Okay. Who then is Jesus Christ for our time? Schleiermacher's idea of Christ begins with Christ as founder of Christian faith, who instills into our consciousness from generation to generation our incapacity to save ourselves, and who constitutes our redemption. I'm going to get a little bit theological here. That redemption he described as release, a movement from captivity into freedom, and restoration of a relationship from God we are meant to have. Redemption and piety that results are closely connected primary Christian elements, like two sides of the same coin. The founder of Christianity, Schleiermacher said in On Religion, was remarkable as the best mediator yet of a clear consciousness of the divine being. In Christianity, redemption signifies a transition from the pain associated with God's forgetfulness to the pleasurable experience with growing moments of consciousness of one's absolute dependence upon God and redemption through Jesus Christ. In effect, this position on Christology takes him and places soteriology before Christology. Christ is felt first in his effects on us, and only then after are we theologians able to turn back, like Lot's wife, and to turn back and consider this reality. That was a joke, by the way. The reason Schleiermacher is often labeled as that liberal theologian is that he argued Christ should be seen as little as possible from the metaphysical or mythical viewpoints, and as much as possible from the human and existential experiential points of view. Traditional formulations about nature and person and will and essence and all those words, no matter how well-meaning, tend to mislead. It would be better to say simply that God lives in Christ, determining his self-consciousness in clear and distinctive ways, his God consciousness. That would be the clearest definition of the incarnation as God's revelation to us. The work of Christ is to save. What happens when we're saved? Again, forgive my theologizing, but I love this stuff. Generally, the original activity of the Redeemer, preceding our own passive activity, takes us up or assumes us into his own life and communion in a way not foreign to how Christ, the divine, and human nature are combined into one person. So when we get saved, it's like Jesus assuming divine nature. There's something organic about it. Fosdick drove the fundamentalists mad as well. The religion of authentic Christianity and Jesus, he said, are identical. There's no distinction between the religion of Jesus and the religion about Jesus. Christian faith centers in the personality and life and teachings of the historical Jesus. However, he lamented, Christianity has systematized itself. At the beginning, it was a spiritual gospel involving new relationship of God and of man with man, proclaiming a new heaven and a new earth. However, Christianity did not remain simple. It became a vast ecclesiastical system, with church piled on church, with nearly 2,000 years of schisms and divisions. The consequence of this separation is that Jesus the Christ is hardly known, he lamented. He invited his Riversiders to see Christ as the primary personality that has come into the world to demonstrate how God is at work in the world. Quote, I am not inviting you to sign a theological creed on the dotted line. I'm not inviting you to join a sectarian denomination, subscribe to its particularities. I'm inviting you to see Christ. I think we should go to the conclusions. One cannot help but imagine that had Schleiermacher been a contemporary of Fosdick, he would have smiled broadly at the theological ruckus that Fosdick had kicked up in his preaching and his books. Fosdick's life and thought and preaching closely parallels the track that Schleiermacher had laid. Schleiermacher lived with the consciousness that he must bridge the gap between the new challenges of the Enlightenment and the empty religiosity of his own age's old-time religion. For Fosdick, it was a bridging between the modernist huge questions about the nature of the world and the fundamentalists' two easy answers. Like Schleiermacher, Fosdick attempted to reinvigorate a tired religiosity and to introduce a new religious sensibility for his time, to his time, one with seismic shifts about how the universe, and thus God, actually operates. Both preacher theologians were pivotal figures for their time, and I think we are too. Today's paradigm changes have produced yet again polarizing camps which don't even listen to each other. Where are the Fosdicks and the Schleiermacherians amongst us? In an era when either side would throw the other side's baby out with the bath, Fosdick, modeling Schleiermacher, called his listeners ever and again back to the table. Listen to each other. He did not present a script for people to sign or memorize. Rather, he invited each into the adventure of adding insight upon insight. To the modernist, he proclaimed a reflective life of faith. To the fundamentalist, he urged an enlightened hope. To both, he spoke of the redeeming love of God and called them to just action. Today, we are at a similar cultural impasse. We live too in transitional times. As with people in Schleiermacher's and in Fosdick's days, people too today can be too quick to hear single-noted siren calls or drum beats from pop faith and pop reason. Thus, many could easily dismiss these two eminent scholar preachers' calls for layered, intercontextualized feelings of mind and heart and reason and faith, including the modern and the traditional. It's not that they wanted to see one or the other, they wanted a third way to see both. And that to me is the courage that I take from them for the living of these days. Thanks.
Not having read as much Fosdick as I should, are there footnoted tracks of his dependence upon Schleiermacher, or are you drawing this in terms of just your reading of the literature and seeing those commonalities, or does he really leave a trail?
You've exposed me. Thank you.
Oh, that was my rule.
Yeah. When Terry Tice asked me to do this, we all assumed that there would be direct DNA trails and trails from the 1820s, 1800s, Germany, Berlin, to New York City in 1920. But there ain't none. I've got copies of his bibliographies, his library list, and all his books were basically things with the latest copyright. He didn't have much, but what this book is going to show is that Fosdick is the heir of a bunch of other theologians who then sat at Schleiermacher or sipped at him first home. So he's in that river, but farther along in the river. But like in a river, I can't tell where the warm part of the river started upstream. I can't really tell. I just know that I'm a beneficiary.
Some of Schleiermacher is mediated through these other theologians.
That's exactly, Schleiermacher's mediated. But we thought that I'd be able to find direct DNA footprints, but there are none. I was surprised about that. So thanks for exposing me.
Other questions?
Most I was familiar with literature during Fosdick's lifetime. Has anything happened since the living of these days, or anything happened like in the last 20 years? I remember Fosdick preaching in New Orleans when I was a student in New Orleans Seminary. But it's been years. Has anything come out that's sort of exposed something maybe we hadn't known for 20 years?
About Fosdick?
And his beliefs?
No, he's
Pretty well
said. And for my chapter, which I'll be glad to email anybody if you want, I was able to go to New York City and I've incorporated 32 sermons that are not yet published. So, but the sermons that are not published are pretty much vindicators of things that we find in his book. There's no smoking guns or big revelations. Good question.